A very good morning, students. Welcome back to the class Evolution and Hereditary. Today we are going to learn the concept of fossils, evolution by stages. The first topic is fossils. The studies of organ structure can be done not only on current species but also on species that are no longer alive. How do we know that these extinct species over existed? We know this from finding fossils. Then, what are fossils? Usually, when organisms die, their bodies will decompose and will be lost. But every once in a while, the body or at least some parts of a body may be in an environment that does not let it decompose completely. If a body of an organism is dead, gets caught in hot mud, for example, it will be not decompose quickly and the mud will eventually harden and retain the impression of a body parts of a insect. Not only the part like leg and all, even the feather like or any other a thinnest part also what happens if it may falls an image or even any kind of a impression which is falls on a hot mud or any other form, it will be retained for a longer duration. All such preserved traces of living organisms are called fossils. How do we know how old the fossils are? There are two components to this estimation. One is relative. If we dig into the earth and start finding fossils, it is reasonable to suppose that fossils we find closer to the surface are more recent than fossils we find in the deeper parts. The second way of dating fossils is by detecting the ratio of different isotopes of the same element in the fossil material. The carbon dating we will be having, that is isotopes of carbons, are mainly used to determine the age of a fossil. So hence even the elements what happen plays an important role in finding the age of any fossils. How do fossils form layer by layer? Here we are having steps. So thus what happens, you can see that is after a number of years what happened above any of the organism layer by layer what happened, the soil which is formed, so deeper parts of the earth what happened, you can see that is there will be a formation of a fossils takes place. So next thing we have to move on is evolution by stages. A question that arises here is, if complicated organs such as the eye are selected for the advantage they provide, how can they generated by a single DNA change? Surely such complex organs will be created bit by bit over generation. But how can each immediate change can be selected for? There are a number of possible explanations. Even an intermediate stage, such as rudimentary eye, can be useful to some extent. This might be enough to give a fitness advantage. In fact, the eye like wing seems to be a very popular adaptation. Insects have them, so does an octopus, and so do vertebrates, and the structure of an eye of each these organisms is different, enough for them to have separate evolutionary origins. So another example we are having, we can start out as providing insulation for cold weather in a feathers of any bird, but later they might become useful for flight. In fact, some dinosaurs had feathers, although they could not only fly using the feathers. Birds seem to have later adapted the feathers to flight. This, of course, means that birds are very closely related to reptiles since dinosaurs were reptiles. So it is all very well to say that very dissimilar looking structures evolved from a common ancestor design. Is it true that analysis of the organ structure in fossils allows us to make estimate of how far back evolutionary relationship goes? But those are guesses about what happened in the history. Are there any current example of such process? The wild cabbage plant is a very good example. Humans have over more than 200 years cultivated wild cabbage as a food plant and generated different vegetables from it by selection. This is, of course, artificial selection rather than natural selection. So, some farmers have wanted to select for very short distances between leaves and have breed the cabbage we eat. Some have wanted to select for arrested flower development and have breed broccoli or for sterile flowers and have made the cauliflower. Some have selected for swollen parts and come up with kohlrabi. So, molecular phylogeny. We have been discussing how changes in the DNA during cell division lead to the changes in the proteins that are made from this new DNA. So, all this what happens plays a very important role in the changes of a gene which is taking place in any evolution of an organism. So, we can directly say that is genes will play a very important role in an organism. The same tools for tracing evolutionary relationship, excavating, time dating and studying fossils as well as determining DNA sequence have been used for studying human evolution. There is a great diversity of human forms and features across the planet. So much so that for a long time people used to talk about human races. Skin color used to be the commonest way of identifying these so called races. Some were called yellow, some are black, white, or even brown. Over recent years, the evidence has become very clear. The answer is that there is no biological basis to the notion of human races. All humans are a single species, not only that, regardless of where we have lived for the past few thousand years. We all from Africa. The earliest members of the human species, that is, Homo sapiens, can be traced there. Our genetic food trips can be traced back to our African roots. A couple of 100,000 years ago, some of our ancestors left Africa while others stayed on. While the residents spread across Africa, the migrants slowly spread across the planet from Africa to West Asia, then to Central Asia, Eurasia, South Asia, East Asia. They traveled down the islands of Indonesia and the Philippines to Australia, and they crossed the Bering Land Bridge to the America. They did not go in a single line, so they were not traveling for the sake of traveling, obviously. They went forward and backward with groups, sometimes separating from each other, sometimes coming back to mix with each other, even moving in and out of the Africa. Like all other species on the planet, they had come into being as an accident of evolution and were trying to live their lives and best they could. So far, we have learned that in this chapter how the hereditary plays an important role, and for the evolution, what are the factors responsible, and the evolution plays a very important role in the survival of an organism, and how evolution which takes place, and these hereditary and evolution plays a very important role in any species of an organism to survive in the environment. Thank you.